The morning sun cast long shadows across the research station's landing pad as Tom Reed adjusted his environmental suit. The air on Nova 7 was breathable, but the high pollen count made protective gear necessary during spring seasons. He checked his equipment one last time before heading out for his daily survey. "Remember to stay in radio contact, Tom," called Bill from the control room. The older scientist had been warning everyone to be extra careful lately. The Council's warning about shadow claws in this sector is still active. Tom nodded, though he knew the gesture wouldn't be visible through the station's tinted windows. "Copy that. Just doing a standard sweep of Zone 3. Should be back before dinner." As he walked through the purple grass fields that surrounded the station, Tom thought about the recent warnings. Shadow claws. The name alone made most spacers shake in their boots. The species had earned a reputation as the galaxy's most lethal predators, and stories about their attacks filled the news networks. Most described them as massive, shadow-colored creatures with natural armor and claws that could slice through reinforced steel. Tom's hand scanner beeped steadily as he collected data about the local flora. He enjoyed these solo missions away from the station's cramped quarters and endless safety briefings. The morning passed quietly as he cataloged new plant species and took soil samples. Around midday, his scanner picked up an unusual reading. The energy signature didn't match any of the known local wildlife. Tom followed the signal, making his way through a dense patch of thorny vegetation. The purple grass gave way to rocky terrain, and the signal grew stronger. A low growl stopped him in his tracks. There, trapped between two fallen rocks, lay a creature that matched every description of a shadow claw he'd ever heard, except for its size. This one was smaller, probably young. Its metallic-looking scales shimmered with an almost oil-slick pattern, shifting between deep purple and black. One of its legs was pinned under the rocks, and dark fluid, probably blood, stained the ground beneath it. Standard protocol was clear. Report any shadow claw sighting immediately and retreat to a safe distance. Tom's hand moved to his radio, but he hesitated. The creature's eyes locked onto him, and what he saw wasn't the mindless aggression everyone talked about. There was pain there, and something else, intelligence. The shadow claw made another sound, softer this time. It reminded Tom of the injured wolf cubs he'd helped rehabilitate back on Earth. Acting on instinct built from years of working with dangerous animals, he slowly crouched down, maintaining eye contact but keeping his posture non-threatening. "Hey there," he said softly, knowing his voice wouldn't translate but hoping his tone would. "You're in quite a spot, aren't you?" The creature's head tilted slightly, its four eyes blinking in an alternating pattern. Tom noticed how its defensive posture shifted just slightly, still wary, but with a hint of curiosity. He reached for his medical scanner, moving deliberately to avoid startling the creature. The readings confirmed his suspicion. A broken leg, but nothing life-threatening. The rocks had created a natural splint, probably preventing worse damage. "Okay, friend. Let's see if we can help you out." Tom opened his field kit, laying out basic medical supplies. The shadow claw watched every movement, its head swaying slightly as if analyzing his intentions. Tom's radio crackled. Base to read. "You've been stationary for 15 minutes. Everything okay out there?" He knew he should report this. Every regulation said he should. But he also knew what would happen if he did. They'd send a security team, and this injured creature would be seen as a threat. All good, base. Just taking detailed readings of some interesting mineral formations. Might be a while. The shadow claw's eyes narrowed at his voice, but it made no aggressive moves. Instead, it let out a series of clicking sounds that didn't match any of the violent vocalizations described in the warning reports. Tom smiled behind his face shield. "Yeah, I guess we're both breaking some rules here. Let's keep this between us for now." As he began the careful process of treating the creature's injury, Tom realized this moment could change everything humans thought they knew about shadow claws. He just needed time. Time to understand. time to document, and time to show others that even the galaxy's most feared predator might be more than what it seemed. He didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a friendship that would reshape galactic relations forever. Over the next few days, Tom made excuses to return to the rocky area, where he'd found the injured Shadowclaw. Each time, he brought a small medical kit and some supplies hidden in his survey equipment. The creature remained where he'd first found it, though it had managed to create a small shelter under a rocky overhang. "Looking better today," Tom said quietly as he approached on the third morning. He'd started calling the creature Scout in his private notes, noting how its eyes constantly tracked movement and analyzed its surroundings. Scout responded to his arrival with a series of soft clicks, different from the threatening sounds described in official reports. Tom set down his kit and pulled out a portable scanner. The leg was healing well, thanks to the basic treatment he'd provided, but Scout still couldn't walk properly. As he worked, Tom noticed something fascinating. Scout was mimicking his movements, studying how he operated the medical equipment. "You're not just intelligent," Tom muttered, watching Scout carefully open a sealed package of medical supplies with its smaller, more delicate front claws. "You're probably smarter than most of us realize." A sudden rainstorm caught them both by surprise. Instead of seeking better shelter, Scout shifted its position, extending one wing-like appendage to shield Tom from the worst of the rain. The gesture was so unexpected that Tom nearly dropped his scanner. Back at the station that evening, Tom couldn't stop thinking about Scout's protective behavior. He sat in his small quarters, reviewing his secret recordings. The official reports described Shadowclaws as mindless killing machines, but everything he'd seen suggested the opposite. "Tom," Bill's voice came through his door communicator. "You've been spending a lot of time in Zone 3. Found something interesting." Tom quickly switched off his screen. "Just some unusual plant growth patterns. Nothing major." "Well, be careful out there." Another station reported, "Shadowclaw attacks yesterday. Nasty business." After Bill left, Tom pulled out his personal tablet and started making notes. Scout's behavior didn't match any of the reported attacks. The creature showed problem-solving skills, empathy, and even a sense of curiosity. But sharing these findings too soon could be dangerous, for both him and Scout. The next morning, Tom brought something new, a simple puzzle box containing food. He'd designed it himself, based on what he'd observed of Scout's dexterity and intelligence. He placed it near the rocks and stepped back. Scout examined the box from every angle, clicking softly. Within minutes, the creature had figured out the locking mechanism. Instead of immediately taking the food, Scout looked at Tom and made a new sound, something between a purr and a hum. "Go ahead," Tom encouraged, gesturing toward the box. "You earned it." As Scout ate, Tom noticed movement in the creature's scales. They shifted colors slightly, creating patterns he hadn't seen before. He grabbed his tablet and started recording, wondering if this was some form of communication. A distant alarm from the station made them both freeze. Scout's scales instantly darkened, but the creature moved closer to Tom rather than away. The alarm turned out to be a routine drill, but Scout's protective response told Tom everything he needed to know about their growing trust. "I need to head back," Tom said after the alarm stopped. But first, he pulled out another puzzle box, more complex than the first. "Something to keep you busy while I'm gone." Scout took the box carefully, those intelligent eyes studying Tom with what seemed like appreciation. As Tom packed up his equipment, he realized their daily interactions had become more than just scientific observation. He was forming a real connection with a creature that everyone else feared. That night, Tom started writing a proper research paper, documenting everything he'd learned. Someone needed to show the truth about Shadowclaws, to prove they weren't the monsters everyone believed them to be. He knew it would be risky, but as he reviewed his notes and recordings, he became more convinced that this could change everything. What he didn't know was that his time was running out. Soon, he would have to choose between following protocol and protecting his new friend. And that choice would have consequences beyond anything he could imagine. 2 weeks had passed since Tom first met Scout, and each day brought new surprises. This morning, he sat on a flat rock, watching in amazement as Scout demonstrated something unexpected. The Shadow Claw was using small rocks to create patterns on the ground, not random shapes, but clear geometric designs. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" Tom said, recording the patterns with his tablet. Scout's leg had healed enough to move around, but the creature chose to stay in the area. Tom suspected it was no longer about the injury. Scout raised its head and made a complex series of clicks and whistles. Then, using its claws, it drew a circle in the dirt and placed 3 rocks in a specific pattern. Tom noticed it matched the arrangement of the local moons. "Stars above," Tom whispered. "You understand astronomy." He quickly drew Earth's solar system in the dirt. Scout watched intently, then used its claw to add more details to Tom's drawing, details that weren't visible without advanced telescopes. A crack of thunder made them both look up. Storm clouds gathered overhead, but instead of seeking shelter, Scout began making urgent sounds. The creature pointed its snout toward a distant valley, then back at Tom, repeating the motion several times. Tom checked his weather scanner. "That's odd. No rain predicted today." But Scout became more insistent, now gently pushing Tom away from the area. Years of working with animals had taught Tom to trust their instincts. Okay, I'm going." He'd barely made it halfway back to the station when the storm hit. But it wasn't just rain. It was an acid storm, one of the deadliest weather phenomena on Nova 7. Scout had sensed it coming and warned him. Later that evening, safe in his quarters, Tom reviewed his research notes. The pieces were starting to fit together. Shadow Claws weren't just intelligent. They had knowledge and abilities far beyond what anyone had imagined. But why did everyone think they were mindless killers? He pulled up reports of Shadow Claw attacks on his screen. Something didn't add up. Most attacks happened near mining operations or in areas with heavy industrial activity. The official reports labeled them as aggressive territorial behavior, but Tom was beginning to see a pattern. The next morning, despite the lingering effects of the storm, Tom returned to Scout's location. He found the Shadow Claw carefully cleaning acid rain residue from the rock formations, using its scales to absorb the harmful substances. "You're not just surviving here," Tom realized aloud. "You're protecting the environment." Scout turned to him and made the same humming sound he'd come to recognize as agreement. Tom set up his recording equipment and began a new log entry, Day 15 of Shadow Claw observation. Subject shows not only high intelligence but also advanced understanding of astronomical phenomena and environmental preservation. Their reported aggression may be a response to ecological threats rather than territorial instincts. Scout approached while he was recording, carrying something in its smaller front claws. It was a crystal formation Tom had never seen before. The creature placed it carefully in front of him, then used its claw to draw in the dirt again, this time creating a map-like pattern with the crystal's location marked. "Are you showing me where to find more of these?" Tom asked. Scout responded by drawing more symbols around the map. Some matched the warning markings Tom had seen near dangerous mining sites. A sudden message from his tablet interrupted their interaction. "All research staff. Emergency meeting in main hall at 1400 hours. Topic: Updated Shadow Claw containment protocols. Attendance mandatory." Tom's heart sank. He looked at Scout, who seemed to sense his worry. The creature moved closer, its scales shifting to display patterns that Tom now recognized as signs of concern. "I won't let them hurt you," Tom promised quietly. "But I need to understand more. Everything we think we know about your species might be wrong, and I need proof to show them." Scout's response was to draw one more pattern in the dirt, a complex spiral that Tom recognized from ancient star charts. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a star map showing the location of something important. Tom quickly copied the pattern into his tablet. Whatever Scout was trying to tell them, he knew it would change everything. But first, He had to survive this emergency meeting without revealing what he knew. The real challenge was just beginning. Tom's head was still spinning from the emergency meeting as he rushed back to Scout's location. The station's new orders were clear. Shoot any shadow claws on sight. No exceptions. No questions. His heart pounded as he ran through the purple grass fields, hoping Scout was safe. He found the area strangely quiet. Scout wasn't in their usual meeting spot, but fresh marks in the dirt showed recent activity. Tom's hand scanner began beeping rapidly, detecting multiple large life forms nearby. His blood ran cold when he heard a deep, thunderous growl behind him. Slowly, Tom turned around. There, standing twice as tall as Scout, was an adult shadow claw. Its scales rippled with dark colors, and its 4 eyes fixed on Tom with an intensity that made him freeze. 2 more adults emerged from the shadows, their massive forms making Scout look tiny in comparison. "Easy now," Tom whispered, fighting every instinct to run. His eyes searched for Scout among the group, finding his friend trying to push through the adults to reach him. His radio crackled to life. "Tom, sensors show multiple shadow claws in your area. Get out of there now. Security team is on the way." The adult shadow claws reacted to the sound, their scales darkening in what Tom now recognized as a warning pattern. But Scout moved quickly, positioning itself between Tom and the others. The young shadow claw made a series of complex sounds, clicks, whistles, and deep rumbles that Tom had never heard before. The largest adult, probably the pack leader, stepped forward. Tom held his breath as it lowered its head to study him. Up close, he could see battle scars across its armored scales, evidence of conflicts with those who had invaded their territories. Scout continued its sounds, occasionally pointing to Tom's medical kit and the puzzle boxes they had shared. The young shadow claw's scales shifted through patterns Tom had learned to read. Trust, friendship, protection. To his amazement, Scout was telling their story to its family. The sound of approaching vehicles made everyone tense. The security team was getting close. Tom knew he had only moments to prevent a disaster. "Base, this is Tom," he said into his radio, keeping his voice steady. "Hold your position. Do not approach. I repeat, do not approach. I am not in danger. Have you lost your mind?" Bill's voice came through. "Those are shadow claws." "Listen to me," Tom insisted, watching as Scout demonstrated to the adults how they had solved puzzles together. "Everything we think we know about them is wrong. They're intelligent, peaceful, unless threatened. The one you see with me. I've been studying it for weeks." The adult shadow claws moved in a circle around Tom and Scout, but their posture wasn't threatening. They were protective, creating a barrier between their young one and the approaching humans. "Tom, step away slowly," the security team leader's voice commanded through the radio. "We have weapons locked on targets. If you fire, you'll prove them right about us," Tom said firmly. "They've been defending themselves against our aggression. Look at them. Really look. They're not attacking me." As if understanding the tension, Scout started drawing in the dirt again. This time, the adult shadow claws joined in, their claws creating an intricate pattern that Tom recognized from their earlier conversations. It was a map showing their territories, and the mining operations that had been destroying them. "Everyone, hold position and watch," Tom broadcast, pointing his tablet's camera at the drawing. "They're trying to communicate with us." The largest adult made a sound that reminded Tom of Scout's warning before the acid storm. It pointed its snout toward the distant mining facilities, then to the sky, making the same warning sound. "They're not just protecting territory," Tom realized aloud. "They're protecting all of us. Something at those mining sites. Something dangerous." He looked at Scout, who nodded in that eerily intelligent way. The security vehicles had stopped just within view. Tom stood his ground, surrounded by creatures that everyone feared, but that he now understood were something far different from monsters. "Base, call off the security team," he said. "I'm staying here. It's time we learned the truth about what's really happening on Nova 7. And the Shadow Claws. They're going to help us understand. The next few moments would determine whether humans and Shadow Claws would begin a new chapter of understanding, or if fear would once again lead to violence. The next morning, the research station's main hall hosted an unprecedented meeting. Tom sat at a large table with Bill, the security team leader Mark, and 3 senior scientists. Across from them, Scout and 2 adult Shadow Claws sat calmly, their scales shifting in subtle patterns that Tom had learned to read as expressions of cautious optimism. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Mark muttered, his hand instinctively close to his stunner. The adult Shadow Claws noticed but made no aggressive moves. Instead, they focused on helping Scout arrange crystals on the table. "Watch this," Tom said, pointing to the crystals. "They're not just pretty rocks." Scout carefully positioned the last crystal, then used its claw to draw a familiar pattern around them. As soon as the pattern was complete, the crystals began to glow, projecting a 3-dimensional map of the planet's surface. The senior scientists leaned forward, their skepticism giving way to wonder. "Impossible," Dr. Walker whispered. "This is technology we've never seen before." Scout made a series of clicks and whistles, pointing to specific locations on the map. The largest adult Shadow Claw, whom Tom had started calling Elder, added deep rumbling sounds that made the crystals pulse with different colors. "They're showing us something about the mining sites," Tom explained, checking his tablet's translations of their earlier communications. "These crystals aren't just mineral deposits. They're part of a planetary defense system." Bill shook his head in disbelief. "Defense against what?" As if answering, Scout drew another pattern, and a holographic map zoomed out to show the entire star system. Red warning symbols appeared around several mining locations, pulsing with increasing intensity. "The mining operations," Tom continued, "they're not just destroying Shadow Claw territory. They're damaging an ancient network that protects this sector of space." He looked at Elder, who nodded slowly. "That's why the Shadow Claws have been attacking those sites. They're not aggressive. They're guardians." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Walker was the first to speak up. "If what you're saying is true, we need to stop all mining operations immediately. But the corporations won't like that." Scout suddenly stood up and walked to the room's main computer terminal. To everyone's amazement, it began operating the interface with its smaller front claws, bringing up data that the station's sensors had been collecting for months. "They understand our technology," Mark said, his hand finally moving away from his weapon. "All this time, we thought they were just animals." The adult Shadow Claws exchanged looks, their scales displaying patterns that Tom recognized as approval. Elder stepped forward and carefully placed another crystal on the table. This one projected images of other worlds, showing Shadow Claws working alongside different alien species. They'd done this before, Tom realized. They're not just guardians of this planet. They're protectors of multiple worlds. But somewhere along the way, we humans misunderstood their intentions. Scout made a gentle humming sound and moved closer to Tom. The young Shadow Claw's scales shifted to display the pattern Tom now knew meant friend or ally. The other scientists watched in fascination as Scout began teaching them basic scale pattern meanings. "We need to document everything," Dr. Walker said, already taking notes, "and we need to prepare a report for the Galactic Council. This changes our entire understanding of not just Shadow Claws, but planetary defense systems across known space." The meeting continued for hours as the Shadow Claws shared more of their knowledge. They showed maps of other crystal networks, demonstrated their understanding of stellar phenomena, and even revealed how their scales could process and neutralize environmental toxins. By evening, the station had sent its first official report to Earth headquarters, recommending an immediate revision of all Shadow Claw protocols. Tom watched from his desk as Scout helped the scientists calibrate their instruments to better detect the crystal network's energy signatures. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked Scout quietly. "You knew we'd eventually understand if someone just took the time to watch and learn." Scout's scales rippled with colors that Tom had never seen before, a new pattern that seemed to represent hope. Outside the station windows, the adult Shadowclaws were already working with the security team to map safe zones around the crystal networks. The age of fear was ending. A new era of cooperation was beginning, all because one human had chosen to defy expectations and make a friend. But unknown to them all, this was just the beginning of a much bigger challenge. Tom stared at his computer screen in disbelief. The file Scout had helped him decrypt painted a disturbing picture. Multiple mining corporations had known about the Shadowclaw's true nature for years. What's worse, they had deliberately hidden this information. "Look at these reports," he said to Bill, who stood behind him reading. Galaxy Mining Corp didn't just stumble onto these crystal deposits. They've been tracking Shadowclaw movements across different planets, finding the defense networks through them. Scout moved closer to the screen, its scales darkening with what Tom now recognized as anger. The young Shadowclaw pointed to specific sections of the documents with its claw, drawing connections Tom hadn't noticed. "They knew?" Bill asked, his face pale. "They knew what the crystals were for and still kept mining." Before Tom could answer, the station's alert system flashed red. Elder burst into the room, making urgent sounds that Scout quickly translated through a series of drawings. More mining ships were entering the atmosphere, dozens of them. "They're not here for regular mining operations," Tom said, reading the incoming ship signatures. "These are military-grade vessels. Someone leaked our report to the corporations." The station's main screen lit up with an incoming message. A man in an expensive suit appeared, his smile cold and practiced. "Research Station Nova 7. This is Director Reed from Galaxy Mining Corporation. We understand you've been spreading some concerning rumors about our operations." Tom felt his heart race. He knew that name. Reed was infamous for using any means necessary to protect corporate interests. The director continued speaking, his voice carrying a clear threat. "We're sending teams to help correct these misconceptions. Please prepare for their arrival. For your own safety, we suggest you hand over all research data regarding the Shadowclaws and their crystal networks." Scout suddenly made an urgent series of clicks. The young Shadowclaw ran to the crystal map they'd been studying, activating it with a specific pattern. Red warning signals began pulsing across multiple sectors. "They're not just coming here," Tom realized, watching the map. "They're launching operations on every planet with known crystal networks. This was their plan all along. Wait until they found enough sites, then take them all at once." Elder and the other adult Shadowclaws gathered around the map, their scales shifting in complex patterns that Tom had learned meant they were sharing strategic information. Scout quickly drew a new diagram, showing how the crystal networks connected across space. "If they destroy enough of these networks..." Tom's voice trailed off as he understood the implications. "The entire sector would be defenseless against stellar phenomena. Solar flares, radiation bursts, asteroid fields. The crystals help regulate and protect against all of it." The station's sensors detected the mining ships entering the lower atmosphere. They had maybe an hour before they landed. Bill rushed to the communication console, trying to contact Earth authorities, but all long-range communications were suddenly jammed. "They've thought of everything," he said grimly. "We're on our own." Scout touched Tom's arm, drawing his attention to a new pattern being created by the adult Shadowclaws. Their scales were synchronizing, creating a rippling effect that spread between them. The crystal map responded, showing new points of light spreading across its surface. "They're calling for help," Tom said, watching in amazement. "The Shadowclaws, they're all connected through some kind of network, just like the crystals." Elder made a deep, resonating sound that seemed to vibrate through the station's walls. The crystal map showed dozens of new signatures appearing. Shadowclaw packs from neighboring systems, all converging on threatened locations. "We need to buy them time," Tom said, turning to the station's staff. "We have to protect these crystals until help arrives. Everything depends on it." Scout stood beside him, scales shimmering with determination. The young Shadowclaw had grown so much from the injured creature he'd found weeks ago. Now they faced their greatest challenge together. As the mining ships descended through the clouds, Tom looked at his unlikely allies, human and Shadowclaw standing together, preparing to protect something greater than themselves. The real battle for Nova 7, and perhaps the entire sector, was about to begin. The truth was finally out, but would they survive long enough to share it with the rest of the galaxy? The dawn sky over Nova 7 filled with lights, not just from the approaching mining ships, but from dozens of Shadowclaw vessels emerging from hyperspace. Tom had never seen anything like it. The ships weren't crude or aggressive as everyone had believed. They were elegant, their designs seamlessly integrating crystal technology. "Look at that," he whispered to Scout, who stood proudly watching the arrival. The young Shadowclaw's scales rippled with colors that now seemed to match the ships above, blues and silvers that Tom had never seen them display before. Director Reed's voice crackled over the station speakers, less confident now. What is this? All ships, begin emergency protocols. Don't let them near the mining sites." But the Shadowclaw ships didn't attack. Instead, they positioned themselves in a complex pattern above the crystal network points. Elder stepped forward, raising its claws toward the sky. All the adult Shadowclaws joined in, their scales synchronizing in a wave of light that connected with the ships above. The crystal map in the station suddenly burst to life, projecting a massive image that everyone could see. It showed not just Nova 7, but hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, all connected by the ancient defense network. Scout quickly drew new symbols, explaining what they were seeing. "It's not just a defense system," Tom translated for the others. "It's a record of their history, of how Shadowclaws have been protecting these worlds for thousands of years, working with different species, maintaining balance." The mining ships began powering up their weapons, but they never got the chance to fire. The synchronized Shadowclaws activated the crystal network, creating a shield of pure energy that surrounded the planet. Their ships passed through it easily, but the mining vessels couldn't penetrate it. Suddenly, new signals appeared on their communications array. "This is Admiral Chen of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force," a firm voice announced. "All mining vessels are ordered to stand down immediately. We have received and verified the evidence of corporate misconduct and environmental crimes." Tom looked at Scout in surprise. The young Shadowclaw's scales showed a pattern he recognized as satisfaction. "You didn't just call for your own people, did you? You were transmitting the evidence through the crystal network this whole time." Scout made a happy clicking sound, touching the computer terminal with one claw. The screen showed hundreds of transmissions, all the corporate files they'd discovered, being broadcast through the crystal network to every major government and news organization in the galaxy. Director Reed's face appeared one last time on their screen, now pale with fury. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you're interfering with." His transmission cut off as galactic peacekeeping vessels began surrounding the mining ships. Over the next few hours, Tom watched in amazement as Shadowclaws and humans began working together openly for the first time. The adult Shadowclaws showed the station's scientists how the crystal network really worked, while Scout helped establish a basic translation system for their scale patterns. "Tom," Bill called from the communication station, "you're getting messages from research centers across the galaxy. They all want to establish peaceful contact with the Shadowclaws. You're being credited with changing everything." But Tom shook his head, looking at Scout. "I didn't change anything. I just took the time to understand instead of fear." Scout was the brave one, trusting the human even after everything they'd been through. Elder approached them, its scales showing a new pattern that the translation system interpreted as beginning. The great Shadowclaw touched the crystal map once more, and a new image appeared, showing humans and Shadowclaws working together on multiple worlds, protecting the networks that kept everyone safe. "They want us to help rebuild what was damaged," Tom realized. "Not just the crystal networks, but the trust between our species." Scout moved to stand between Tom and Elder, its scales now showing a complex pattern that meant both friend and future. The young Shadowclaw had grown from an injured creature to a bridge between two species, proving that understanding could overcome fear. As the sun set on Nova 7, the sky filled with the combined lights of human and Shadowclaw ships working together. The station that had once been a simple research outpost was becoming the first joint human-Shadowclaw center for galactic protection. Tom looked at Scout, remembering their first meeting, ready to show everyone what real friendship can do. Scout's scales rippled with all the colors of hope, and a new chapter in galactic history began.